Brian, let's get into the spring game a little bit. It seemed like the offense was ahead of the defense, which is to kind of be expected with where the defensive personnel was in that game. Is that fair?
I thought the offense had a better day for the most part. I didn't, I think a big part of it's what you're talking about. When you look at who is off the field for the first string defense, I mean, that's the heart of that unit. So you'd expect some of that. But I mean, Dylan Raiola was the name on the marquee that was in the biggest letters for most people, for probably about every person. And when he was out there, the thing I liked is it didn't matter which unit he was functioning with. They seemed to have a little something behind him. He made the throws that showed off the arm talent, and then there were the throws he didn't make, which were just as impressive. That sort of contributed to the offense having that third down play. Rule mentioned in the post game where they're in field goal range. He's rolling right, and a lot of guys in that circumstance would have said, you know what, scrimmage, I'm here to show a little something. I'm going to fling this across my body and see if I can't fit it in a window, make something happen. I just like how it seems like he's building habits, no, that's not what I do on this one. I'm running out of bounds. We live for the field goal. And it was stuff like that I think the coaching staff appreciated as much as his performance as the long touchdown pass, to be honest. And I did too. It's the thing after a 31 turnover season where you look at a play like that and you're like, there it is. That's sometimes the difference between winning one of these Big Ten games and losing it by 3 points.
BC, can I at the same time want him to have thrown it because I wanted to see it happen and also appreciate the fact that he didn't? Because I think they're going to have this tension with Dylan, assuming that it continues to develop and move forward the way we think it's going to with him as QB1. But I think there's going to be a tension there between wanting him to show off these physical tools that we really haven't seen out of a Nebraska quarterback, and also making better decisions so we don't run into the same problems we had last year. Like, do you kind of get that sense already?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, give me the better decisions though all day.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know what you're saying. As like a fan, sometimes you want to let's see if he can parallel park that thing between that. That's what you want. But I just thought he was very poised and in control for, knowing the attention that was on him and that people are going to be sort of putting the Zapruder film on this thing for 4 months, about what the good and the bad was. This might seem over the top, but it's how I feel. It was the most encouraged I've been about an individual performance from a spring game and what it can mean to the team. It kind of just confirmed what I thought, but this spring game and how he did was the best I felt about an individual leaving it since when I was in college and DeMario Williams just took over a spring game in 2002. I wrote that and I mean it. And it's just because I just like that he was so consistent throughout the day. A lot of times when we've come out of spring games and we've hyped up a player like Jamal Turner or somebody because he flipped in the end zone, I don't remember what Jamal did that whole day, but he might have caught 3 passes or something, and he had the one highlight, and we make a big deal about it. I just like that there was a drumbeat to his performance that I felt was reliable. And I know it's just a scrimmage and all that, but for what we came there to watch, I thought he delivered that and made you feel good about where that's progressing and made you feel like you'd heard the stuff accurately from coaches all spring about how they felt the QBs were doing. Because obviously I thought Harburg, and I think Danny had his moments too, showed that position has made some steps this year.
Gosh, I can't help but to think of music. So you're either Michael Jackson, You're Not Alone, or it's like a Dr. Phil. It's a Dr. Feel Good moment, because when your colleague isn't dressing me down on air, he's gonna sell Kool-Aid. Would you set up shop next to Shafe and you guys kind of peddle the good vibes? Like, are you guys to that point? Because he said, full disclosure, like, all the Kool-Aid. He's like, oh yeah, like he's all in. He's all in with the old powder drink.
I just felt good about where that the most important position sat leaving that field. I just thought, like, this is a guy who has a mentality that it's not just us that are picking up on it. I mean, he wrote the story with, Dawson Merritt and his dad, obviously, who coaches with the Chiefs. And
Well, that's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know some people will take that a certain way. I know what the Merritts are saying with that. It's like the mannerisms, it's the traits. It doesn't mean you're going to obviously be that guy, but you've got that sort of makeup about you that can lead to you being really successful. And I see what they're talking about from that angle. And I didn't go over there on Saturday just like
super thirsty.
To be like, yeah, just fired up through the roof about Dylan Raiola. I thought he would perform well. I know you've seen more of the stuff than I have over there, Damon, and I thought he would do well because I'd heard he has had a good spring.
Nobody's asked me, BC, but I'll say this and admit this out loud. He was significantly better on Saturday than I thought.
That's interesting.
There were some times I looked at Sharpie. I looked over at Coat, and I was just like, huh. Right? Like he exceeded my expectations, and it wasn't the physical stuff so much as I got the sense like he should have been born in the 70s or 80s. He seemed like he had been there before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, and that's what I grabbed onto. It just felt like he sort of belonged in that sort of situation where, everyone came to see you, but I can do this. I was built for this. I've trained for this, and I'm going to go back to that and just make the right decisions. And I liked in the post game, on the interception. I actually didn't see that play back again, so I don't know. Maybe it was a little behind him. I didn't think it was a really bad ball when he threw it, but I just like that he took it all on himself. Like he said, "Oh, that's me. I got to be a better ball." Like whether it is or isn't doesn't matter. I thought he was hitting the right notes throughout the day, and some of this is because, frankly, around here, through some of the years, Nebraska's made like some standard like screenplays and things that I don't think should look that difficult, look very difficult. And I just thought on this particular day, a lot of the routine stuff that should be done, like chewing gum, was done that way. And like he just put the ball in the money to let guys run with it. I like that earlier in this spring, when he was asked about explosive plays, and I think the question was trying to kind of get him talking about throwing the long ball and all that stuff. He's like, I got guys that I can get them the ball. You can get them that 2 5-yard pass and they can take it 25 yards. He's understanding like how those guys can benefit him if he puts the ball in the right spot, even on those short passes. So I don't know. He really impressed me Saturday. I'm probably going over the top a little bit, but I felt good about it. It made me feel a lot better about the offense than I've felt in a while. And it made me pay a lot more attention to the spring game than I've in a while. So all those things, you have to give credit to the guy who delivered there.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I've told this story, right? I wanted to be a profiler before I was a marine biologist, and before I figured out none of those things are realistic. When I got to college, I settled on elementary education. But I loved, so when I say that about him exceeding my expectations, now keep in mind, just the Tuesday before we're down there and we're getting all our nutrition stuff done and getting set up for labs, and he comes out of the pool because, and he's wet, and he like grabs Caleb from behind. He's like, "What's up, man? Something." I try not to listen, but he's like soaked, and he like jumps back in the water, and I'm thinking, this is the same guy that I just saw calmly walk up to the huddle, motion guys over, embrace the moment. When he talked about coming out of the tunnel and what it meant for him, I'm like, there's a lot of range in there. But what it lets me know is he understands. This is my takeaway. He understands the moment of where he needs to be and where he is currently. Like he is
Situational needs.
his situational awareness. I was blown away from. I'm like, this is a pretty cool kid, young man.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the recruits were buzzing about him. I mean, it just it transferred everywhere. I mean, the fans enjoyed it. Obviously, it picks up your peers on the offensive side of the ball when they feel like they've got good QB play and they're going a certain direction. But I'm talking to like offensive lineman John Mills, who was in visiting, and those guys are bringing up Ryla unsolicited, and it's just attractive to those type of players. Like, yeah, that's going to be pretty good maybe for a few years. That wouldn't be a bad thing to be a part of. They know how much that position serves the drink, and he does have that temperament around whether it's his fellow players or even the new guys on campus. I think they felt like he's very personable with them, and so all that stuff matters. And so it sounds like he's done a really good job handling, what it means to be Nebraska's quarterback, and that's a tough job when you're a top 5 talked about name in the state like that. But he seems well prepared for it so far.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, I know we talk a lot about the family dynamics of Dylan in terms of how he got here, right? Obviously, uncle's on staff. Dad was a star here. Do we talk about it enough in terms of what the qualities in Dylan that we've just been talking about, being from a football family, having pro football players kind of model behavior for him in terms of his kind of expedited maturity in a football sense? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I think that's a huge part. And I mean, I think it helps you with the highs and lows, and there are going to be lows. There's going to be potholes this season that come with being a freshman quarterback, but you've seen people close to you go through it. It's not just his dad or his uncle. He surrounded himself with coaches that played at that level and, at the highest level. And he's seen how they've dealt with the good and the bad. And, okay, maybe this situation arises over here. How do you handle that particular thing? And you take mental notes on it, and it helps you when you get to that point. And we got a lot of guys like that coming through the program right now who have been associated with that sort of background throughout their life. I mean, Caleb's going to have that here at Nebraska, and I know Damon tweeted about. I wrote a story about the Vanden Bosches. Those boys are being recruited by Nebraska. It's kind of fun for me. You're seeing all these names cycle through now, 20 years later, and all those kids, not kids, as young men, when you talk to them, they'd have a temperament. I can say almost a 98 percentile in a lot of these guys I'm talking to. That's very impressive, and it's they're much more mature than I was at that age. And I think it does come from you're studying the people around you and how they deal with some of that stuff, and then it helps you when you get to it.
Yeah, I think KVB is an amazing person. Like I could just see in an interview where they just ooze humility. There is no other way other than his dad. I mean, he was a pro's pro. The way that he attacks life, he doesn't need the credit. Like, they're going to be fun. They're going to be fun to watch their evolution. BC, let me ask you something about the players that didn't play, because and maybe this is more me, so I just want to know if we're all in the same gang. There were stretches of this scrimmage where I forgot or didn't even think of no Jamari Butler, no Prince Umamewellen all spring, no they held Buford out for the most part. Like, there are some guys that aren't even really the guys yet. Well, I guess Butler is, that didn't play, that didn't come to mind. Were you watching that? Which lets me know they have some pretty good depth. Were you watching that thing thinking, who's missing? Or were you watching that thing thinking, golly, they're going to have some nice additions too?
I think they're going to be able to do what they did last year, and by that I mean I think they're going to be able to roll out about 20 to 22 guys and feel good about it. And that I do think they can get to that point. I don't know, maybe you don't, but
no. The only reason I say that, I'm fact finding the same as I'm asking. I just wonder if the standard is built for regression. You know,
if I'm honest, it wasn't one of those days, and maybe I got caught. See, I haven't been able to watch it back yet. I'm actually going to do that today.
Okay.
Maybe it's because I got so caught up in the Dylan Raiola thing and what the offense was doing. The defense did not pop as much to me on Saturday. It didn't. Like, there wasn't like a guy where I was just like, oh man, he just jumped off the screen at me. That said, I've heard enough and from people I trust to think that there's some guys that I think maybe at a young age can really contribute and be nice complementary parts to those guys who are missing. And you're here, like, I don't know if Vincent Shavers, for example, is going to be ready right off the jump or not. But
you see his opening. You see his opening tackle on that screen.
Yes,
he shows you some flashes, boy. He's a monster.
I like what he's about and all that. But I got really caught up, not just in Raiola, but on the offense. I was kind of looking at how they were using certain guys, like Janiran Bonner when he pops up, and he's working with the first team right off the bat. And I just think they've found some guys like him. There's the guys like your Luke Lindenmeyers, your sort of unsung guys. It's like that niche category of like 3 to 5 guys on offense that you need to be really good at what they do in particular to have this offense meet the next level. And I kind of got distracted with some of those thoughts. But I'm going to go back and study the defense more today, I think. And I do think that the interesting thing now is what happens at the, at that cornerback spot. It was really a bummer when Bly went down. There's no doubt about it. It would be any time, but that's a guy who, 12 practices in as the head coach saying if it were today, he'd be the guy opposite Tommy. I mean, that's big work he got done. And so I hope he can get back as soon as he can. But I'm really interested now, like how that transpires and sort of who the names are that emerge, as next in line there.
Yeah, BC, it's super interesting because I think, we talked about this last week where there's a ton of names in that secondary and a ton of options. And I still don't know who the corner would be tomorrow opposite Tommy Hill now that Bly Hill has been banged up. Now, there's some hope that I think that he'll be back before fall, but we really don't know any of that yet. Like that, isn't that kind of a strange place to be in where you look at it and you're like, hey, I like that guy, maybe Jeremiah Charles, they've talked highly about him. And, you've got all these different guys that you kind of like, but you have no idea necessarily where they fit or how good they actually are when you get into games.
Yeah. And I know mid-spring, it was mentioned by Evan Cooper, like Hartzog was working at safety and stuff like that. Obviously he's been a guy who's been around and has played all those spots. And so there's pieces you can move around, but the point is, and it was going to be this way, even if Bly were ready to go or not, but you're going to have 2 or 3 young players, like sort of in their first year of college football, I think step up and help your depth at that corner spot. And as much as we talk about the schedule opening up opportunities on the front end, and as much as right now it's fashionable to take our licks at what's going on with Colorado, that is a good QB. He's got some weapons on the outside, and that's going to be a major test for some young players that second game of the season. So it definitely is one of those, like, okay, if you said, what are like 3 topics, give me, that you're sort of pondering with a little bit of like not concern, but you're cautious about as it ends the spring. Well, when Bly went down, it would be that corner spot, and like exactly how is that going to look and all that. But all told, I do think that's a confident group on the defensive side. I like the leadership from the players, and I think they set the tone. I think Gift sets the tone, and that it'll be a different look in the fall camp when 7 or 8 of those guys who weren't on the field on Saturday are out there and challenging you in scrimmages, and then you get to the game. So that changes the picture from what we saw during the red-white game for sure.
BC, when will you start to entertain relative to what you saw on the offense that we've been lamenting about versus what the defense can replicate and special teams? Like, is that after summer? Is it now? Are you already in that process of how those things can coexist?
Oh yeah, well we got 4 months to talk about it, so I think we gotta hit on those topics just as much to fill the time, right? So I mean, it was yeah, it was a bummer, that for Alvano to go 1 for 3, and the first one was a rough miss. No, I mean there's no lies about that. So I know he's a confident kid. You know his mentality more than I do. He's got good people around him. The tough part is you can work through it all off to the side, but you still got to go out there in that game setting, and you're going to have some success early on to really feed that mindset, where it's like, okay, I saw that one go through, and now I'm off and running. So that's where you hope that, like in the first game, you get a little distance. There's that 38-yard kick where Nebraska's already up 14 points. He knocks it through, and it kind of just you're running downhill then, that sort of thing. So that's what I hope. But yeah, I'm definitely thinking about it. And I mean, from what we've seen, there's been some struggles there. And so this is a savvy fan base. They know, and this coaching staff has emphasized a lot of these games are going to be decided by 3 or 4 points. You've got to have that position in order. So hopefully Tristan can get it going, because I know the talent's there, and I know he's got the guys around him to try to help him through it. So hopefully it gets going.
That's Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7 BC. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, B.
Yep, thanks, guys.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next.